Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating collision of ideas. On one side, we've got the blindingly fast rise of artificial intelligence, right? And on the other, humanity's timeless, ancient search for meaning. We're going to explore the philosophical dialectic of John Lennox. He's a mathematician and thinker who recently sat down to dissect how a relentless race for super advanced technology is fundamentally challenging our definitions of consciousness, faith, and what it actually means to be human. To really set the stakes for what we're looking at today, listen to this incredibly provocative observation from Lennox. He says, there are worship groups that worship AI because it's got some of the qualities we normally associate with God. I mean, think about that for a second. An entity that seems omniscient, answering literally any question instantly, and omnipresent across the internet. It's a striking concept. As we engineer increasingly powerful technology, we're beginning to mimic the divine, and in some corners of society, people are responding with literal reverence.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The AI and transhumanism threat. 2. Defining human consciousness. 3. Rationality, science, and faith. 4. The grace versus merit distinction. And finally, number 5. Suffering and the hard questions. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The AI and transhumanism threat. Racing towards the machine god. Okay, before we get too deep into the philosophy, we really need to be precise with our definitions. Currently, we operate with what's called narrow AI. This is technology programmed to do one specific thing incredibly well, like, say, finding a pattern in medical data to diagnose cancer. But the tech industry is racing toward AGI, artificial general intelligence. This is the absolute holy grail. We're talking about a super intelligent machine that could theoretically perform any intellectual task better and faster than any human. It's essentially the difference between a really useful tool and an autonomous supermind. And you know, this pursuit of a supermind bleeds right into our next big concept, transhumanism. Historians like Yuval Noah Harari have argued that with these recent advancements, humans are now hackable animals. Transhumanism is essentially this agenda that views physical death merely as a technical problem we just haven't solved yet. By merging biology with machine intelligence, the goal of transhumanism is to bioengineer humans to completely overcome our physical limitations and, well, elevate ourselves to the status of little gods. Which brings us directly to the mindset of the creators themselves. To a former Google engineer, the mission isn't just about making a profitable software company anymore. Some leaders out there view their work as effectively creating a god. Because think about it. If you build an entity 1 billion times smarter than humanity, that knows everything and sees everything, you are absolutely flirting with the creation of a brand new, machine-centered religion. Section 2. Defining human consciousness. The hard problem. Now, Lennox points out a really vital difference between simulation and reality. Imagine you hold up a mug. Both a human and an AI can output the words, "that is a mug." The output is totally identical, but the internal process, worlds apart. Humans possess what philosophers call qualia, that conscious, lived experience of what it actually feels like to see the color red or to hold a warm mug of coffee in your hands. The machine has zero awareness. It's just blindly following a complex pattern. It simulates intelligence perfectly, sure, but it experiences absolutely nothing. This actually builds on the work of psychiatrist Ian Mickelchrist, which Lennox uses to diagnose our modern cultural anxiety. Our brains obviously have two hemispheres. The left hemisphere handles that narrow, reductionist, hyper-rational focus. The right hemisphere is for the big picture, context, beauty, art, meaning. The argument here is that modern society is basically trapped entirely in the left brain. We've built this incredible AI because we know exactly how everything works, but we're facing this massive existential crisis because we grasp the meaning of nothing. Section 3. Rationality, Science, and Faith. Contrasting worldviews. So, here is where Lennox really challenges the strictly atheist materialist framework. He asks scientists an incredibly simple question. If you knew the computer sitting on your desk right now was the end product of a completely random, mindless, unguided process, would you trust the results it gave you? The answer is always no, of course not. Lennox argues that if the human brain is solely the product of unguided natural processes, it totally undermines the very rationality we rely on to do science in the first place. For Lennox, rationality itself actually points toward a rational creator. Section 4. The grace versus merit distinction, the cookbook analogy. This brings up the exact philosophical inverse between two massive worldviews. On one hand, we've got the transhumanist agenda. Humans leveraging technology, reaching upward to conquer death and engineer themselves into gods. But on the other hand, we have the Christian narrative, a God stepping down to become a fragile human. One is a desperate, endless climb upward. The other is a descent downward to meet humanity exactly where it is.
Lennox uses this amazingly playful analogy to explain why merit-based systems just fail us completely. Imagine you get married, and instead of expressing unconditional love, you hand your brand new spouse a super expensive cookbook. And you tell them, look, if you follow every single rule in this book perfectly for the next 40 years, then I will accept you. But if you make a mistake, you're out. I mean, it's absurd, right? No one in their right mind would base a marriage on a flawless performance of rules. Yet this is exactly how so many people view religion, as this strict, exhausting system of accumulating merit. The big takeaway here is that true relationships, whether human or divine, are fundamentally based on grace and early acceptance. Grace totally flips the script. It says you are accepted first, and that security is what actually sets you free to live fully. It completely removes the crushing pressure of having to perpetually earn your worth through flawless performance, which is a really stark contrast to the relentless perfectionism demanded by both modern society and rule-based religious paradigms. Finally, Section 5, Suffering and the Hard Questions, the agnostic pushback. One of the biggest agnostic pushbacks out there, famously championed by critics like Richard Dawkins, relies on this specific statistic: 91%. Globally, 91% of adults simply adopt and keep the religion they were raised in. If you're born in certain parts of the world, there's a near-total statistical probability of exactly what faith you're going to hold. So the critique is heavy. How can ultimate truth, or concepts like heaven and hell, be determined by a geographic birth lottery? Is that actually fair? But the absolute toughest challenge raised in the source material goes even deeper into the problem of suffering. If a creator is all-knowing and all-powerful, why allow a child to be born in poverty, destined only to have a parasite consume its eye? That's one of the tragic examples highlighted. Let's just pause for a second and let the sheer gravity of that settle. Why would an omniscient being architect a reality where that kind of hopeless suffering is permitted? It's literally the ultimate agnostic roadblock. Lennox totally acknowledges that this is the hardest question of all, and he offers a multi-layered response. First, he points to the Christian narrative that God didn't just remain distant, but actually entered the world to actively participate in its suffering. Second, he argues that in a purely atheistic, materialist worldview, that suffering child simply dies and becomes nothing. There is zero ultimate hope or justice there. Therefore, he posits that only a worldview containing resurrection offers a framework where victims of horrific earthly suffering can be ultimately restored and compensated in a reality beyond this one. Wow, we've really covered some immense ground today, haven't we? From the cold, calculating efficiency of artificial general intelligence to the incredibly warm, complex realities of human consciousness, grace, and suffering. As machines learn to perfectly mimic human output, the question of what happens inside our minds and our souls becomes undeniably the most urgent conversation of our time. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. As the noise of the machine god grows louder, how will you anchor your own truth and meaning in an increasingly automated world? Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep asking those hard questions.